Microsoft recently released the new V6 SKUs into Azure. In today's video, I'm going to give you the quick overview of the performance differences and what the core differences are, the speed differences. Then we're going to go through and do side-by-side comparisons. So I've got 3 virtual machines deployed. I've got a V3, V5 and a V6 VM. And I'm just going to run some benchmarking software on each one to see the speed differences as well. We will actually go in and look at the cost differences to see how much these different SKUs cost. This is going to be a really good overview of how it could affect your end users, because a faster CPU equals better performance for your end users. But then we can look and see, okay, how much is that extra performance going to cost me, and is it worthwhile? So really looking forward to today's video. Let's get to it. If you haven't been here before, welcome. This is the virtuamanc YouTube channel. My name is McLoughlin. On this channel, we take the latest news around Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365, Intune, Nerdio, that kind of stuff, to bring you stuff which you may find useful in your day-to-day jobs. If that's the kind of thing you're into, please hit the subscribe button, and I'm looking forward to today's video. So let's get looking at some interesting benchmarks. Let's have a look at what the actual differences are between a V5 and a V6 SKU. Obviously, the main differences are increased hardware support. The way I look at it is, if you go to PC World, would you buy an old PC or new PC? It's the same thing here, using old versus new. To realize why we're going to get performance increases from choosing no new SKUs, let's have a quick look and see what the differences are. The testing decided to do for this video is I've focused on one SKU, right? There's lots of different SKUs within Azure. So I focused a popular type of workload that you get within your VDI DAS environment. And then I've just done on a like comparison. So I've decided to focus on AMD. I may do another video and focus on Intel as well. But I just wanted to see a true like-for-like comparison, a kind of V3, V5, V6 VM. Spoiler alert, for the V3, I had to use an Intel. I'll show you the performance differences between all 3 workloads. All right, so let's just take a quick look and see what the differences are between a V5 and a V6. So I've picked these workloads, which is the D4 ADS V5. That's what I'm going to use. The V5, yeah, probably what a lot of you are using at the moment. So we can see the ADS V5. So that's based on the AMD EPYC 7763V processor, right? So we're getting the Genoa build, as they call it. Basically, what that gives you is Zen 3 architecture. It gives you DDR4 memory and PCI Express 4 on 128 lanes. So that's the core spec of these VMs. And the SKU that we've picked is this. So we've picked this D4 ADS V5. We're getting 4 CPUs and 16 gigs of RAM. Okay, so you can see here, this local storage, you get 150 gig temp disk, and remote storage, you get like 6,400 uncached IOPS. And we also get 2 NICs, giving a maximum network bandwidth of 12,500 megabits a second. Okay. All right. So that's that spec. Let's see what we get if we move up to the new VM SKU. So if you go to the Azure portal, you'll see the new 6 series here. I'm going to pick the DADS V6. This is the one that we're going to be using for testing. Key differences are using the updated architecture. We're using the AMD EPYC 9004 Genoa build. You get the new AMD Zen 4 architecture, which gives you DDR5 memory speed, it's faster memory, but it also gives you PCI Express 5 lanes as well. From a server operating perspective, which is important for Azure Virtual Desktop multi-session workloads, it should give you much better performance, right? Because we've got a faster processor, PCI Express 5 and DDR5 memory for intensive workloads. It should be much better as well. The biggest difference that we've made around the 6 series is NVMe storage. So previously we had SSD storage, now we've got NVMe storage. That should give increased performance if you're using ephemeral disks. Okay, maybe we'll do another test for that as well. So they're the main differences between the 2 SKUs. We're going from Zen 3 to Zen 4, DDR4 to DDR5, and PCI Express 4.0 to 5.0. Okay. So that's the main differences. I'm going to take you over how I've done the comparison with the workload, just do the testing, and then we'll see the performance differences between those 2. I'm focusing on the CPU, right? Not the disk. We'll log on to one of the VMs that I've created. I'll show you what I've done to build this, and then we'll focus on the results. So I'm just going to flick over to the screen. I've built 3 separate host bus. One of them is a V3 VM, one is a V5 VM, and one is a V6 VM. Okay, these VMs are all powered on at the moment. So you can see the V3 VM is a D4S V3, the V5 is a D4 ADS V5, okay, and the V6 is a D4 ADS V6. Okay, so both 4 cores, 16 gigs of RAM. So this is a true side-by-side comparison, right? You can see this VM is powered on, and I'm actually last user login was me. So what I then done is basically for the testing, I've used something called Geekbench, right? So Geekbench is a kind of benchmarking software that's allowed me to take the performance and do multiple tests. You can see here it gives you a score when it goes through a lot of different tests, and it shows you the differences between the clock speed of the VMs and how much cache we've got. So if I go here, just run like CPU benchmark, it'll go through and it just runs those tests for me. If I go into my processor usage, you can see there. Obviously, this is not true workload. I don't have tools to do that. If you wanted to, you use something called Login VSI, or you use C-score from Benny to see the actual impact on the workload. I wanted to show you the performance differences from a numbers perspective, from the cost differences, and we'll get into that next. This is how I did the test. I wanted to show you what that looks like. Now that we know the test that we've ran, let's analyze the results and see the differences between the V3 VM, a V5 VM, and a V6 VM. Okay, all right, let's look at the results. All right, so now let's analyze the results and see what they're telling us. This is the V3 VM. We've got a single score of 1048 and a multi-core score of 2190. We've got a clock speed of 2.8 gigahertz, running 1 processor, 2 cores, and 4 threads. So now let's move on to the V5. Here we've got a single core score of 1513 and a multi-core score of 3372. So that's 1048, 1513, 2190 to 3372. Right, so I'll give you a quick summary of the percentage increases for those. You can see here we've got the AMD EPYC Pro 7763 processor running 2.44 gigahertz on 2 cores. So if you have a look at this one, we're running 2.79, faster clock speed, but a different type of architecture. This is the Intel processor from a V3 to a V4. Let's look at the V6. We've got an increase, which is good. We've gone from 3372 to 4442, quite a considerable increase there. So we can see here, this is the updated architecture. We've got 1 processor, 2 cores, or 4 threads, and a clock speed of 2.60 gigahertz, maximum clock speed of 3.6 compared to 2.44 and 3.2. So we've got a higher clock speed, which normally equates to more responsive performance for the users. You can see here the level 3 cache on the V5 is 256 megabits, whereas on the V6 it's 320. That would give you increased performance as well. That's the results of the testing, because it's going to be increased, but it depends on what that increase actually is. So now let's take a look and see what the cost differences are, right? Because we need to work out, okay, we have a performance increase. Is this applicable to cost? And we'll look at the percentage increase in those performances differences as well. All right, so let's look at these results and see what the differences are going from a V5 to a V6 VM. For the single core test, it was 31% faster. Okay, or 31.79, so you could round that off to 32%, I guess. On the multi-core score, it was 31.74%. So again, round that up, you get 32%. So you're getting about 32% extra speed from those processors, which would hopefully increase to a much better user experience from the end user perspective. See, if you go from a V3 to a V5, you get like 44% faster and 53% for multi-core. But you can pretty much see the scores as well. Go from a V3 to V6, that's where it gets really interesting, because you get double the speed. For those still on V3 VMs, you may want to look at upgrading to either a V5 or a V6, because you'll get a much better bang for your buck. Now that we know what the performance differences are, so not surprising, right? Obviously, we were going from all those architectural differences. We're going from DDR4 memory to DDR5. We're going from PCI Express 3 to 5, and we're going for a much more better processor. So let's now have a look and see what those cost differences are, right? Because Is this going to cost us more money? Don't know. Let's find out and see the cost difference between these three different SKUs. We know we've got around a 30% performance increase from going from a V5 to a V6. So let's actually see what's the cost. Okay, so I've just done some calculations. I've got the cost off a website called Vantage. The price per hour for a default ADS V5 is 39 cents, okay, per hour. The price per hour for a default ADS V6 is actually 41 cents an hour, right? That's a difference of 3 cents per hour. If we're basing the average hours on 160 hours a month, it's going to cost us around an extra $3.20 per month from a V5 to a V6 VM. That obviously equates to like 30% increase in performance as well. Bang for buck, pretty good. Obviously, CPU speed is better. Now, the question would be, does that equate to actual better user experience? I'd say from a single user desktop, probably not. They're probably not going to notice much difference. But from a multi-session desktop, the user experience will be quite considerable because you've got multiple users driving that CPU a lot harder, and you'll really see those performance increases for your users. If you've got 1,000 VMs in your environment, it costs you an extra $3,200 a month. Obviously, you've got 500 VMs in your environment, it'll only cost you an extra $1,500. So definitely a no-brainer for me. I hope you found today's video useful. VM SKUs is something which people set the defaults, but we really need to put a lot of thought into it. So today's video, I've just focused on the AMD SKUs. Maybe in the future video, I'll look at the Intel SKUs as well. I'll do an Intel versus AMD comparison. For me, I'd always go with the fast SKU because it equates to a much better user experience for a slight cost increase. If you like this kind of videos, please share and subscribe. If you've got any videos that you want to see, just drop me a message. I'm more than happy to think about additional content that I can provide value to you guys. See you next week. Thanks. Bye.